Well, hello there, everybody. So tonight, as you might have guessed from a tweet I released a couple of weeks ago, today's theme was movies with hell in the title.
Movies with hell in the title
So today we
were
watched.
gross.
So today we watched Hellboy.
Hellboy.
Well, come on in. Meet the rest of the family.
Abraham Sapien.
Liz Schumann. It's a beautiful name.
Don't worry, Boy Scout. She'll take care of you.
These freaks, they give me the creeps.
Really?
Every time the media gets a look at him, they come running to me. I'm running out of lies.
If there's trouble, all us freaks have is each other.
And Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, a film by Clive Barker.
We'll tear your soul apart.
No, we watched Hellboy last week. Hellraiser.
The vision is renewed. The power is reawakened. The fear is reborn. Because they have returned.
Time to play.
Hellbound. Hellraiser 2.
And then Motel Hell.
I have a surprise for you.
Oh, goody, I love surprises.
One after another they come. One after another they check in. And pray for the day they can check out.
So you're an idiot.
Okay.
I'm telling you, we watched those movies.
No, we watched...
We'll have to think about this. Cut to intro sequence, and then we'll be back to you after we...
Afraid I'm not following this bit at all. What's happening? Who are you? Where am I? What's going on? Are we doing a video?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Let's take this from the top. Hello, welcome to a new episode of Couch Potatoes. Potatoes. Your favorite place for half-assed, somewhat sleepy criticisms of movies.
Yep.
With long, rambly tangents about other completely different topics.
For full context,
Do not break my controller this time.
For full context, we were recording this at 2:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah. The best time.
The best time.
I like how the items from when you play as the saucer are still visible on the ground. It looks so stupid. Anyway, so today we watched movies with hell in the title.
Part 2, because last time I intended for us to do Couch Potatoes, but we never ended up doing it.
We wanted to do a Couch Potatoes on Hellboy, but then we ended up getting distracted watching Hellraiser before Hellboy.
Before Josh showed up, because Josh wasn't showing up.
And then Josh showed up, and then we watched Hellboy.
And then I said, how about we film it now?
And then we were all so tired that we didn't.
Which means we're doing it at 2:30 in the morning.
And then we were
going to
do it again later, and then Josh left today because he was like, I gotta leave early, and then he
we're
bailed.
doing it without him.
Yeah, so, and then we streamed Doki Doki Literature Club earlier, and that's kind of about hell.
And we were supposed to do that with Josh, but
then he bailed. Josh, you're a bastard. I'm gonna kick your ass.
God damn it, Josh.
When this episode comes out, I'm gonna kick your ass. So, see you in 2019, bitch. Anyway, then we were like, okay, let's start a new theme, and then we watched two more movies with hell in the title.
And then I said, how about we watch Motel Hell? Because I saw it on TV, and I thought, that's a movie that'd be right up Xavier's alley. And then we ended up watching Hellraiser 2.
Because it was on Netflix, and we were like, hey, remember Hellraiser? That was really pretty cool. And then we were like, let's watch Hellraiser 2.
So today, we are going to be sort of doing the table scraps of both of these episodes. And we're not going to be talking too much about Hellboy, because talking about 4 movies would be ridiculous. So we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite Motel Hell first, and then maybe one of the Hellraiser sequels, and if you're lucky, Hellraiser, but that's probably not very lucky, so...
It's a movie about a lot of unlucky people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, Motel Hell is a movie about a guy who loves the environment.
It takes all kinds of critters to make Farmer Vincent's fritters.
Funny-looking critters, ain't they, Vincent?
Yeah, maybe so. But you know as well as I do, it takes all kinds of critters to make Farmer Vincent fritters.
He loves the environment. He wants to also help with the population
he loves
problem.
PETA. He loves animals. He's #woke.
Yes, a very woke farmer whose new method to help with protecting the environment, as well as raising a much more humane way of creating meat, is meat products, is to, instead of processing a shitload of animals to put in his smoked meats, he decides to use people.
No, actually, what he does is that he mixes his pig meat and his human meat together.
Yeah, gets them all mixed up in there.
Turns them into human pig sausages.
Yeah.
It's social commentary when you think about it.
About how environmentalists are a bunch of cannibals?
No, about how people are pigs. Because they mix the meats together.
They mix the meats? Do you know the way? Greetings, future people. That's a meme that's very popular right now. Do you know the way? It's a meme where Knuckles... This is good what you just did.
So
Cut this part out.
So I'm playing Destroy All Humans in the background.
He just smashed a cop with a car. Like, he lifted up a car and then dropped it on a cop. And he used his mind. He telekinesis and then just dropped it. There's not enough games with telekinesis. The only other game I can think of that has anything even remotely similar to this is Star Wars The Force Unleashed.
So...
we need more games where you can lift things up with your mind and then drop them on people.
Yeah, that's true. We do.
No, you need to kill female humans. You sexist. Look, there's one. So in Motel Hell, I feel like the movie...
Motel Hell is about a farmer.
We've already done that. Shut up.
He does that.
He's a farmer who loves stuff.
So the movie starts with
this girl and her extremely old boyfriend.
Yeah, who's going bald.
She's like 20. He's like pushing fucking 50. No, not 50.
40.
More like... No, I would say he looks almost like he's like 55.
Yeah,
like his hair is totally gray. He has a gray beard. His head is balding. And then they get into a car accident, which is implied to be illustrated by...
It is orchestrated. He shot their tires.
Yeah, he shot their tires, so they're like, oh no, we're crashed. And she thinks that her boyfriend dies in the crash. She's revived by this farmer man.
And because he's sexy.
Because he's a sexy farmer man.
Because she's sexy.
Oh, well, he's also a sexy farmer man.
Apparently, because he seduced her.
Oh, yeah. And then also his, like, weird woman-child sister is there, who's supposed to be, like she's, like, 40... No, she's, like, 50 in real life, but has the mind of a 12-year-old.
And also dresses like a 12-year-old.
And dresses like a 12... She has pigtails and, like overalls. And she's really crazy and bizarre, and she's...
And it's sort of implied that she kind of wants a little bit of an incestuous relationship with...
But he's just like, nah. Because it's the South, so they have to cover that at least a little bit.
He's not into it, but she is.
What a strange relationship.
And this is so this movie came out in 1980. And I feel like...
it feels like a movie from 1972.
And my guess is that it's an homage slash a light parody of those sort of like 70s horror films. Think your
Texas Chainsaw
Texas
Massacre.
Chainsaws, your exorcists of the world.
A bunch of Bubba rednecks killing people and eating them in the woods. Like, that kind of fear of backwoods southerner people.
Or like Deliverance sort of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing. It's kind of that sort of, I guess...
era.
Yeah. And, I think something that bothered me about it is that the pacing was really weird, where it would have really slow burn... Like, I can watch a movie that's slow burn all the way through. It was a
slow burn horror film, but then it had really wacky sequences.
With really wacky, quick-paced sequences that
so
are really...
So the tone was weird.
It was fluctuating between being, like...
a slow-paced thriller horror film.
A genuinely slow-paced thriller horror film.
That was a little bit kind of freaky and disturbing.
That was a little weird with, like, a really cool soundtrack. And then it would cut to being, like, the dumbest, like, Bubba redneck laughing, fighting with chainsaws, putting a pig mask on.
There's also a scene where, a couple of, like, weird sexual freaks.
Hey. Huh? I wonder if they're into animals.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple that shows up at the motel. And they're not freaks, David. They have an alternative lifestyle. They're very happy.
Edie, arm me up. Let's get greasy.
We do need this money to continue the telecast.
As I recall on the Wikipedia page, they called them swingers.
They're swingers. That's why they like being tied up and they have whips. So basically, an S&M couple shows up at the motel, which is of course being run by evil people who murder people.
Well, of course it's
make
the
sausage
South.
From them. Yes. So they show up at this motel with the intention of having a good time because it's a motel.
They just want to find a place to have a bang.
Have a bang. And they're doing their usual shtick with the whips and the
whips and the shaving and the cross-dressing.
And the cross-dressing. And it's really goofy and weird. And then, Farmer Man and his sister walk in.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. What? Oh!
We didn't even get a chance to warm up,
Oh, great. You're into bondage. Come on in, we'll all get down.
Thank you.
You look good enough to eat.
Oh! I hope so!
And then this couple is so,
into it.
So freaky that they're like, hey, you can join us. And then they're like, come on, tie us up. And then the couple,
but then they do tie them
the
up.
Farmers are just kind of just going with it and pretending to be like doing it
sexual
for a sexy
freaks.
thing. And then after they've completely tied them up, they gas them with like a nitrous oxide tank.
Cookie, me first.
You take it easy now. There's enough for everybody.
Right.
Okay, go for it.
Wow, come on, let's go.
Okie dokie.
Hey.
Listen, that doesn't smell like laughing gas.
Oh, this is special laughing gas.
What is that shit? Whatever. Oh.
With this stuff, you smell it, and we do the laughing.
All we have to do is give.
And then they're like,
this isn't the fun kind of laughing gas.
yeah. And they go, well, it's a special type of laughing gas. You breathe it, we laugh.
So the tone is...
and then it cuts to, before that. Well, okay, so before that, because this is a really goofy, weird scene. Before that, you have scenes where, people are just kind of really slowly talking to each other.
Building atmosphere, doing tension.
The tone is really quiet and calm and understated.
And a little bit off-putting.
Yeah, a little bit off-putting. It's just kind of... It's going from being
So I think the way
if I could describe the tone, I would say it goes from being a Blade Runner movie to being RoboCop.
I wouldn't quite say it
It hops back and forth.
I wouldn't say it's quite that.
It felt that drastic.
I would say that this is the way I would put it. It can't decide if it wants to be a parody or an homage.
And that's kind of a bad thing, because then it just has the tone all over the place.
Arm me up. Let's get greasy. Oh!
So, I don't know. I feel like I was a little put
I
off by the
liked
fact that it couldn't figure out what it wanted to be.
I like it.
Because then,
I'm okay with that.
You know, it has some, like, really genuinely creepy stuff in it that was, like, really well done and disturbing. And then it kind of ruins it by being, like, weird about it and making, like, a giant joke out of it. So it was like, you build all this tension, you have this slow burn, but then you throw it out the window by doing a scene that's completely quick-paced to the point that it, like, kind of ruins the impact. It's just so all over the place. And I gotta say, it really does feel like it's like some kind of... It feels like a student film, almost.
I wouldn't agree with that.
I feel like the kind of quality of editing is really bizarre and all over the place. The sound effects kind of they're very repetitive. You hear the same gurgling sound effect a billion times.
It's a low-budget horror film.
It's so low budget and also like kind of so, I don't know, disconnected from what it, you know, what its probably intentional vision was. That it comes off as like some kind of botched, really elongated student or indie film. I wasn't really that into it. I think reflecting on it, it wasn't there for me.
Maybe it was because you weren't paying attention for 90% of the movie.
I was.
No. Normally I'm the one who's on the phone, but this time it was him.
I looked away like 4 times during scenes where people
You were also
checking
really
their
busy
email.
doing other stuff during it, so...
That's true. Well, let's not explain what I did because it was illegal. But let's say I got a copy of Photoshop. Legally. Anyway,
yeah, you paid for it.
Yeah, I paid for it.
With your hard-earned money.
On pirate eBay. Pirate eBay. It's an eBay for pirates, and you pay for everything totally legally.
You say R, matey, I'll
R, matey? Yeah. Cut this out. I feel like I understand the idea of what it was going for, and it had some merit. It wasn't a terrible film. I actually really liked a couple of scenes. I just feel like the overall execution just kind of didn't quite stick for me.
But here's the thing.
And there was parts I feel like could have been drastically improved.
We can talk about the other film that we watched previously, which was Bubba Hotep. Which is a similar sort of weird premise, but a lot of somber, slow-moving scenes, and then some really wacky, weird scenes in the middle, and that worked. So I think...
How could I have gone from the king of rock and roll to this? Old guy in a rest home.
You were an Elvis impersonator. You fell off a stage and broke your hip? When was it? 20 years ago.
That's where they took a piece of my brain. I got a little bag of sand up there now.
Jack, President Kennedy was a white man.
They dyed me this color. What we have here at Shady Rest is an Egyptian soul sucker of some sort.
Some kind of Bubba Hotep.
You know, a mummy hiding out, feeding on the sleeping.
He can just keep on feeding unless he's finally destroyed.
All right, man, let's go.
I think it works here. I'm not as...
I don't know if I was really happy with it in Bubba Hotep either. I feel like the rubber banding with your tone can be very detrimental. You gotta You either want to decide if you're going to be a genuine horror movie or if you're going to be hilarious, and then you just got to stick to it, okay?
I think I don't.
For all you would-be horror filmmakers
I don't think it worked
there.
perfectly, but I think that I liked it for what it was. I think it was a decent movie, not a perfect movie for sure, but I kind of like it. I like these sort of weird, out there ideas that have a couple of just go for their weird ideas.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
it. It doesn't always have to work, but at least they made an attempt.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not as harsh about it as he is. So, like, the plot is basically that this girl is riding on the motorbike of her extremely old boyfriend, and then they together, and then the motorcycle is crashed by Farmer Vincent, and then of course who's an evil man, and then he takes the girl's boyfriend into his...
And then plants him like a turnip
in his secret garden.
Full of people who are buried up to their necks.
But he didn't do that with her because he decided to take pity on her because
she was too hot
to murder. She was too hot to murder.
Yeah.
So that was the basic premise, and then after that, it's sort of like it is a little bit slow in that your point of view character is this blonde lady, and a lot of the time she doesn't know about what's actually going on.
She spends like 90% of the movie in the closet about what's going on. Like she has no idea.
Well, she's not in the closet.
I mean, in the dark. I don't know.
She's heterosexual, and she falls in love with
She falls in love with really, really old men.
Mm-hmm. She, like Farmer Vincent, and they're about to get married, and then she discovers...
Oh, yeah. So her boyfriend dies in a motorcycle accident, or so she thinks. He's actually buried somewhere in a secret garden.
Mm-hmm.
But she thinks he dies, and then in the span of a week, she falls in love with this old farmer man who's like in his 60s, who's very creepy and beats up his... woman-child sister, and argues with his...
I think she just has some daddy issues.
And then argues with his cop brother.
Yes.
Who also cop cousin, who has no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's another character, is Bruce. Bruce is the
cop, the sort of like...
He's the town...
Doofy town sheriff.
Yeah, he's the town sheriff, and he's a complete goofball, kind of almost a scumbag,
he looks at
but not
porn.
Quite.
He gets way too creepy about
he tries to make out with Terry and she's not into it, and he keeps going anyway, and she has to say please. He thinks that she's saying please stop, but it's actually something else on the radio, and he goes okay, fine.
He breaks into the he breaks into her bathroom.
Oh yeah, he kicks into the door and is like, how could you marry my scumbag cousin?
So
is he forcing you? And she goes, no. And he goes,
so I think that's a big thing.
And he just sits there staring at her.
Of 70s horror is just a bunch of scumbag characters.
But you're supposed to like the scumbags, which is a bit of a problem.
So, I have to say that I do feel a little bit inadequate reviewing this movie, because I'm not familiar enough with the source material, the homage. The genre of 70s American horror films, like Texas Chainsaw and all those.
Oh, yeah.
To get what they're referencing.
You know, as much as I like 80s and 90s movies, I'm not too into 70s, and I haven't really watched a lot of movies of this sort of camp of, like...
I think that there's
gore-sploitation kind of...
I gotta say that you're missing a lot when you're not watching 70s movies, because... 70s was an interesting time.
I don't have anything against the 70s. It's just that I gravitate more towards 80s and 90s.
Uh-huh.
You know.
So speaking of 80s and 90s, let's you know what?
Let's skip ahead in time a little to a new generation.
Yeah. Although speaking of the weird romance in this movie, what had a weirder romance that I didn't get even more? Hellboy.
I thought we weren't talking about that one.
Congratulations, that's the joke. I didn't like the romance in Hellboy, and I didn't think that Hellboy should have gotten the girl, but that's my opinion. Anyway, we're going to talk about Hellraiser now.
Hellraiser. Beyond any terror you have imagined. A nightmare.
No.
Unlike anything you have witnessed, is born. Because within these walls, the unholy is unleashed. Hellraiser, a film by Clive Barker.
We'll tear your soul apart.
So Hellraiser is a kick-ass movie, and
we're gonna talk about Hellraiser 1 and 2 together, because last week we watched Hellraiser, and this week we watched Hellraiser 2. So Hellraiser 2 is a little bit more fresh in our minds.
Yeah.
But we can't mention it without mentioning the first movie, because it is a direct sequel. So
the vision is renewed. The power is reawakened. The fear is reborn. Because they have returned.
Time to play.
Hellbound. Hellraiser 2.
First of all, let's recap the two movies very quickly. First of all. I'm the sound mixing for.
You're 90% of the sound mixing for this movie.
For Motel Hell. So that's Motel Hell. So Hellraiser, Hellraiser is written and directed by Clive Barker, based upon his novella The Hellbound Heart, So Clive Barker is, the way I would describe him is British Stephen King if he only wrote short stories.
I would say that I very much enjoy the sort of style of horror that Clive Barker does a little bit more than Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King is more like about
weird ideas
that wouldn't really work, but
really
he tries them anyway.
Interesting premises,
like a clown that's
with
actually a
half-baked
ghost,
execution.
that's actually a demon.
But I think that the difference between Clive Barker and Stephen King is that they both have really out there premises. Like, for example, the Cenobites and all that.
Oh yeah, basically the Cenobites.
Allow me to finish my sentence, please.
S&M ghosts.
But Clive Barker has a more interesting execution.
Oh yeah.
He's better at executing them.
He's a way better director.
So he wrote this movie, he directed it, and he adapted it from his own novella. So this is Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and he makes it very clear. He makes it very clear that he wants you to know that it is Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Oh, yes.
It's on the box. Even on Hellraiser 2, it still says Clive Barker's Hellraiser. So, the premise of Hellraiser is that this really creepy hedonist named Frank finds a puzzle box, which is basically the devil's Rubik's Cube, and he
solves it.
He solves it,
which takes him
sweaty, shirtless, in a bunch of surrounded by candles in his attic.
Yes, the most ideal location for such an act.
Solving
and then chains come out of nowhere.
I don't know about you, but when I want to solve a Rubik's Cube, I go up in my attic, I take off my shirt, I oil up, and then I get going.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it's really good. I totally agree.
And then, of course, he solves Satan's Rubik's Cube.
He solves it, and then a bunch of chains come out of the darkness, and then
rip him apart.
There's hooks at the end of them that grab into his skin.
And it's really grotesque.
And then they pull him into oblivion. He's screaming, and it cuts to some weird imagery of people in a room full of chains.
And then afterwards, it cuts to this weird, creepy guy wearing leather with pins in his head, who's the famous character everybody remembers, Lead Cenobite.
Lead Cenobite, that's what he's listed as in the credits.
He comes out and puts together, like a jigsaw puzzle, Frank's face.
Yeah. And then, because the guy's name is Frank. So, Frank gets killed in the first few minutes, but...
That's the opening scene.
Then his brother and
his brother and his sister-in-law.
His brother's new wife.
No, yeah.
Yeah, because they just got together, apparently, like a little while ago.
His brother and his new wife... who had an affair with Frank in the past,
yes,
move into his old house because
they're like, well, they scout out the place and they're like, what's going on?
Our brother may have died under mysterious circumstances in this house, but
it's a nice house.
It's a really nice house.
We better move in.
The
property value is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
It's practically a steal.
Yeah.
You know, literally, we're stealing it because
it's in prime location. It's right on. It's right off the highway, and
it's right off the interstate.
Think about it this way, honey. The commute will be so much easier going to work than in our old house. Now, it may be haunted, but...
It may be severely haunted by S&M demons that want to torture and or rape you for eternity.
But, think you won't spend as many hours in traffic.
That is a pass. That's the pass for me. I'm going to say that passes the test. That's pass.
But, thankfully, Garrick says no. And, says... Because Frank Larry, who is Frank's brother, is played by Elam Garrick from Star Trek.
That's why you came to me. Isn't it, Captain? Because you knew I could do those things that you weren't capable of doing.
That's his name, Elan Garrick from Star Trek. That's what it's his. If you look up Elan Garrick from Star Trek, that's his IMDb page. He plays himself in Star Trek, but otherwise he plays a role.
He puts on human makeup.
Oh yeah, lots of human makeup. It's really impressive actually how well they hid his
alienness.
His alienness.
So that's the premise, and then of course, as they're moving in. A stray nail cuts Frank's hand in a really grotesque scene,
and then it seeps into the floorboards.
And then he goes upstairs.
No, not Frank, Larry.
And then Larry goes upstairs to where his wife is.
I feel like this is super disconnected and confusing, and it's mostly because you keep cutting me off.
And then his blood falls on the floor of the attic, and then in the most amazing.
That
amazing
scene was
practical effects of any movie. Frank, his heart is like underneath the floorboards of the attic. It starts pumping, and then he slowly comes back to life.
He unmelts and his skeleton knits back together. It's
and then
super disgusting.
His upper body and his spine attaches itself to his brain as it's forming back. It's so amazing.
It's probably one of the greatest practical effects we've ever seen.
Okay, and then of course, Frank, who is now basically a half-rotting corpse with no skin, meets Julia, who is the wife,
who's Larry's wife.
Larry's wife,
his brother's wife, who Frank had an affair with at one point. Yes.
And then Julia says, "Hey, remember how hot?" And then Frank says, "Hey, remember how hot our sex was?
Remember how cool I was back when I had skin?
Remember my tattoos? You can see my tattoos again once I get skin again. Sorry, but you're gonna need to murder some people for me."
And then she's like, "Are you sure?" And then she's basically the main character for the first
and then
half
she
of
has,
the movie.
and then she has like a wet dream about how sexy he was, and then he's like, "Yeah, I need sex like that."
I need skin so I can.
You see, I'm sorry, but Garrick from Star Trek just isn't doing me right in the bedroom. So
yeah,
I'm gonna need you. I'm gonna need your help.
So let's go pick up a bunch of unsuspecting, like, kind of bums at bars who are hoping to get laid, and then they get bashed in the face with a hammer repeatedly.
I gotta say,
and then a skinless man comes out of the shadows and crawls along the ground like
and feeds on your blood,
like a creepy gimp monster, and then he pushes his hand into your spinal cord and drinks your blood until he gets more skin.
Yeah,
and
and that's the premise of the movie until midway through the movie, in which it kind of shifts because there's the character arc of Julia in the first movie where
she becomes a crazy person.
As she kills more people for him, she becomes more monstrous and more evil.
But then we switch to a new protagonist,
who is
Kirsty,
who is the daughter of Frank.
Daughter of Larry,
Frank's niece, who is the non-biological daughter of Julia. Yes. Because she's a stepmom. So then she discovers what Julia is doing, and then of course demonic things happen, and...
Oh yeah, so then in order to kind of, like... It almost kind of closes up the plot by giving you a completely new protagonist halfway through.
It pulls a Psycho.
Yeah, it pulls a Psycho, which is also Nightmare on Elm Street did it.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool.
So that's a good way of raising the stakes in a horror film, is either killing off or changing the protagonist.
So you have the protagonist from the first half of the film become a villain.
The way that happens is that it makes you less sure about who's going to survive and who isn't.
Yeah.
Because if you follow a protagonist the whole way through, you're like, she's not going to die in the last 20 minutes.
You're never going to think Spider-Man will die in your Spider-Man movie. However, when you're watching a horror movie, you might sometimes wonder, are we going to switch protagonists halfway through? Because it's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of worry for your protagonist.
So I think this was a very well-written, well-acted horror film.
Well-directed.
Well-directed, too. I mean,
great special effects. It's just all around a solid film. I was expecting it to be way trashier.
It does have a little bit of that first director not quite knowing how to put the camera thing. But it's
a couple of shots where he's like trying to figure out where to put it, and it's just like,
yeah. So, of course, it kind of shows that he's a novelist, and his primary medium of storytelling is not the camera.
But he did a proficient job with it.
So the special effects were amazing. The acting was good. I think that. I think especially the person who deserves the most credit in the movie is the actress who plays Julia.
She does a great job being a psycho.
Because her arc in the movie is the most complex, because she becomes an evil person because she wants to have more mind-meltingly good sex with
a creepy skin man.
With a creepy skin man. And then she becomes more evil as she seduces more people and kills them. Like, the first one, she's nervous and kind of jittery.
But then by, like, dude number 4 she murders, she's
a cold psycho.
Yeah.
So that's a great arc for her. And, of course, what everybody remembers about this movie is what now is known as Pinhead, but as, again, in the credits, lead Cenobite.
So the Cenobites are basically like this race of weirdo demons that exist in another dimension.
And
they're creepy S&M demons, and they just exist for eternity to just torture / have sex with stuff.
Pain and pleasure is mixed together, and
we have such sights to show
explore the limits of human experience, or something like that. The limits of sensation.
It's both very unique.
Demons to some, angels to others is the language.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like beautiful and abstract, but also hideous and disgusting at the same time.
And when you solve the puzzle box, you summon the demons, and they take you to their S&M
creepy infinite sex
torture.
Dungeon. Yeah.
And then, of course, Although the one way to get out of that is if somebody pours blood or spills blood
on the spot where you died.
On the spot where you died, and then in that case, you come back as a weird,
depending on the amount of blood, basically.
Weird skinless monster.
Yeah. So in order to fully resurrect after someone's been taken to
although you don't
creepy
quite
S&M
fully
Dungeonville,
resurrect.
you have to keep getting more and more like blood.
Human blood.
Yeah.
You have to feed on others.
Takes a long ass time. It's kind of a pain in the ass.
So that's the first movie. I think that what I admired the most about this movie was the restraint, because
I thought it was going to be so trashy.
It was
I thought there would be people dying every 5 seconds. There was going to be like a bunch.
Everybody talks about Hellraiser and the torture scenes, but the gore and the violence wasn't the focus. It was very character driven, and then the gore and the violence just sort of happen as part of the story. And the characters as they grow and change.
You know what is interesting, and it happens between Hellraiser 1 and 2, is,
Are we going to move on to Hellraiser 2, then?
Well, yeah, let's kind of transition slowly, because I don't want to get too much into spoilers. I want people to watch it.
Yeah.
But I do think that, it's interesting how their idea of really disgusting gore that like gets to you is not shock value stuff that like happens really quick. Like there's no jump scares, there's no sudden random head explosion.
The thing that makes the gore so grotesque
is because they linger on it.
Is that like
they'll come up with like an effect for something really disgusting looking, and then they'll just film it for a really long time.
The only reason that the Hunger Games didn't get an R rating was because A, the camera was really shaky, and B, there were really quick cuts.
Yes.
So you saw somebody stabbing.
This is like the exact opposite of that.
But you didn't see the wound.
Someone stabs someone in this movie, you see the wound, you see them pull back, you see the knife exit their body, you see the blood leak out, you see the blood fall on the ground.
Very steady.
It's really simple things that are happening. Like, okay, there's a guy with no skin. Most movies would show him in the shadow. This one has like really
you get to see him
really
from
great
many
makeup
angles.
effects. You see him from many angles, and it just doesn't cut away. Like you almost worry that you're gonna get used to seeing this, like these people with horribly mutilated bodies or their skin hanging off or whatever. You don't. The more you stare at it, the more it like gets to you, and that's just I guess like a perk of how well the effects were put together. Hellraiser 2 had some of the most.
Hellraiser 2 is a direct, unlike
we were trying to eat pizza while we were watching it, and it was a real bad idea.
So unlike the rest of the Hellraiser movies, as far as I can tell, this is a direct sequel to the first film.
Yes.
And of course, as all movie series go, the first one is pretty good, very simple. The
second one gets more complicated.
It takes
and
the ideas
awesome.
and runs with them.
And then the third one is just like
it's the third one is the third one.
The third one is we needed to make more money.
Yeah.
So, and we have the rights to this movie franchise.
Hey, do you want to know what company currently has the rights for the Hellraiser franchise?
Fox.
Nope.
Who?
Basically, given the sort of corporate hell that stuck in ever since the Weinsteins left, I don't think there's going to be another Hellraiser movie. It says there's listed one called Judgment, but that's only to keep the rights.
What is going on here? Let's just dive in, shall we?
It's like the Fantastic Four movie made by Roger Corman in the 90s.
Yeah.
They made a cheap-ass, crappy movie just to make sure that they can keep making movies.
Yeah. It's like Josh Trank's Fantastic Four movie.
That was not cheap. That was $100 million.
We spent $100 million so we won't have to lose the movie rights for a franchise we don't want to spend $100 million on.
Yeah. So that was the thing. So Hellraiser 2 is a direct sequel where it's a much more linear movie, I would say, than the first movie, because it doesn't have the protagonist swap. that the first movie has.
Oh yeah.
The strict.
Well, maybe it kind of does, because there's a character who's introduced and doesn't really have a whole lot of effect until
and she has a
much
plot
later.
arc and agency in the third act, but Kirsty is still the main character.
Yes. Yeah.
So in the second movie, Kirsty, who is the daughter of Larry, niece of Frank, is in a mental hospital directly after the events of the first movie because, surprise of all surprises,
Seeing a bunch of people pulled apart with chains.
Nobody believes that you're talking about demons in hell who want to have sex with you while tearing your skin off.
No one believes that. There's also a lot of weird stuff about how kind of the ending of the third movie is... the first movie, I mean. The ending of the first one is put into question a lot.
Because the house is still there.
They actually show the house straight up disappearing. Like, it kind of gets sucked into a portal, and a lot of weird, abstract, crazy stuff happens. Then the police get there, and it's just there, and there's a bunch of bodies in it that are old and decrepit, even though they should have died a day ago.
Who are the men that Julia murdered?
Yes.
Over that time. For Frank. So, of course, Julia's in this mental hospital, and then the puzzle box falls into the hands of creepy owner man, the warden or the head researcher of this hospital.
Yes.
And then he wants to discover what's next in the afterlife. So he gets this mental patient who really likes puzzles to solve it for him.
So he doesn't have to solve it himself.
Yeah, and get sucked into this dimension.
But then the Cenobites show up and are like, hey, wait a minute, she didn't consent to us showing up. Let's leave her be and go find the real person we want.
Wait.
So even the Cenobites love consent.
I made this joke on Twitter.
The Consentabites. Just in
He made
case
that
we had
joke.
to recover it.
No. It is not hands that call us. It is desire.
No one's gonna remember in like 2 years when this comes out.
And then, of course, Julia interestingly enough, in the first movie, it was Frank who came back because blood was spilled on his place.
Yeah.
Now it's Julia because she was murdered on this mattress. And then the mattress was taken to the mental hospital. And then
they get a little bit of blood on it after. A
horribly
really
grotesque
awesome scene. I talked to my dad about this movie, and he's like, "Yeah, there's the director's cut, and then there's like the censored version. You'll tell if it's the director's cut depending on how long that scene in the hospital is, where the guy thinks he has bugs on him, and then someone else gives him a straight razor and says, "Better get him off, dude." And then he tries to get the bugs off with a straight razor, even though the bugs don't exist. I guess we watched the director's cut version because boy did that go on for a while.
I had to turn away because
he was eating pizza and he just...
I wanted to finish eating. So that happened.
Yeah?
Yeah. This movie series is well renowned for the gore, and I think justifiably so, but what I will say that I was surprised by is that there was it wasn't just gore, there was a lot of thought into the characters and the story and the development of all that I really appreciated. That it showed it wasn't just you need that guy.
No. Too bad.
It wasn't just a cheap horror
It's
film.
not... there's a lot of like 80s horror movies that feel really trashy. Like, there's no thought put into them. They're just kind of...
gore.
Let's get as gory and as violent as possible.
And
Let's
I disagree with Roger
kill as
Ebert
many
on
characters as we can. This one had a lot of, like,
So, Roger Ebert...
A lot of really cool character
really
interactions.
disliked the first movie, and he hated the second movie, too.
Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of really
and
good...
I disagree with him in that.
There was also art design. This movie looked great.
There's some craft to this movie, is the way I would put it.
Yes. Especially for a horror sequel in the 80s. That's especially impressive.
So, the sequel is... I wouldn't say better than the first movie. It goes bigger. And it goes to the logical progression with many of the ideas of the first movie. But it doesn't... I still think the first movie was more interesting and more unique.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I like this one more just because it went a little bit further with what they had available.
Its ideas.
It had ideas that it didn't... Like, the first one had ideas that it touched on but didn't explore, so it was just like, well, what the hell is that? Well, what the hell is that? Well, how does that work? Well, who are they? This one actually kind of dug into that, so I really liked being able to...
destroy the computer back then.
Okay. I also really like the way that they kind of came up with a really satisfying conclusion with to a lot of the character stuff going on in this one. Because the last one is just like, well, everyone's dead now. I guess it's over. This one had a lot of really great, endings to character arcs. Like the characters had interactions. There was like several groups with different agendas and different opinions of each other. There was like double crosses and betrayals. There was romance and deception. There's stuff going on. It felt almost like I don't know. I really enjoyed the amount of characters and the amount of stuff going on.
I like the Pinhead. He was a good character.
That was also impressive, is that Pinhead could be a character.
He's not just a guy who likes to torture you. He has a sense of priorities and sensibilities to the way he behaves.
Yeah.
But please, feel free. Explore. We have eternity to know your flesh.
And I think that's really good, is that's the approach that I really liked about this movie, is the almost character-driven approach.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool.
It's a good when you can make someone like Pinhead an interesting character, where you're like,
or you understand what he's going for. At the very least.
You understand you understand his motivation. You understand. You also feel emotions for him, other than, oh my god, what's his problem? Like, you're like, hey, that was pretty cool. There's a really great scene where the Cenobites fight another Cenobite. Because he's like a creepy, like, evil Cenobite, but they're like, let's.
But remember your humanity.
Remember that you were all human, and then they're like, oh, we were human at one point. Maybe we should be good people now. Attempt it.
The one interesting addition to the mythos in the second film is that the Cenobites are humans.
Yes.
Who are just tortured and made into these weird alien people.
Yeah.
So, the mythos of the sequel is that there's this weird other dimension that they call hell, but kind of is and kind of isn't, where you get sucked in and you become a Cenobite through weird torture means. And I will appreciate that in these first two films, they had a lot of imagination when it came to the design of their demon monsters.
Oh, yeah.
In the sequels, it became a little bit just, oh, look, here's
a guy with CDs sticking out of his head.
Or here's some weird makeup. this will satisfy to the fact that these characters are extremely poorly designed.
Is Clive Barker still alive?
Yeah.
Cool.
He signed away the rights to this series.
Oh, that's lame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he probably made a lot of money.
No, he didn't. He signed it off in the first film before he knew he would go anywhere.
That's what happened. You know what? I can think of one other time when an author got screwed over really bad by that.
Mm-hmm.
Is when they were making Rambo. Because Rambo kills himself at the end of the novel, the very first one. The author was not on board with the decision to have him stay alive, because they were like, well, maybe we could make a sequel, and he's like, I don't care about that. So then he kind of bailed out and didn't want to have anything to do with the rest of the series. And then they kept making Rambo movies, and it got like a shitload of money, and it became like this, like, you know, filmmaking classic. And then he's like, I should have been a little bit more open-minded, because I could have made a lot more money if I stuck on board.
Any more thoughts on these Hellraiser movies?
I like the first 2 Hellraiser movies. I'm hesitant to watch another one because I feel like I'd just be disappointed.
I don't think there's anywhere you could really conceivably go in the sequel.
Well, it's just like we already kind of...
It's like the question...
We know everything we need to know about.
It's the question with Aliens. You went bigger in the sequel, so where are you going now?
Well, let's have a bunch of... Let's explain the lore behind the thing now. It's like, well, that makes it less cool. I mean, with Alien, we know everything we need at the end of the second movie about the alien. With Hellraiser, we know everything we need to know about Pinhead at the end of the second movie. It doesn't matter what his backstory was or what his whole deal was before becoming him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's not important.
So move on.
So don't do a sequel.
So watch Hellboy. It's a pretty good solid action movie. And I think that's what we're going to end on tonight.
Oh, okay.